Welcome everyone to the second lecture of our podcast series Equilibrium, an initiative taken by EarthSoul, the economics research cell of Shahid Bhagat Singh College. Whether you are a seasoned researcher or just someone who is interested in understanding how research is carried out, you have come to the right place. In each session, we'll dive deep into the key topics shaping our academic landscape. But before that, let us introduce you to our cell, EarthSoul, the economics research cell of Shahid Bhagat Singh College. Is an initiative of the Department of Economics to foster and promote research culture among the undergraduate fraternity of Delhi University and to make smooth transition from theory to practice. With our vision and mission in mind, we have taken a new initiative of Equilibria. It is a podcast series where we would invite seasoned researchers and professionals to share their key findings, their expertise, their knowledge that they have gained over the years working in the field of research. Now, with this, I would like to ask Hamza to proceed with the podcast.
So, here we are with the second guest of our podcast series, Mr. Girish Sharma. Having completed his studies in economics, Sir has a wealth of experience working in the development sector on a variety of projects and suggesting policies. Sir has contributed in a book COVID 19 and the Indian Economy A Route to Inclusive Recovery, authored by Nicor Associates. It is one of his research works he has authored while a member of Nicor Associates, an economic research firm. Their areas of interest is gender and consumer economics, where they use rigorous analysis to make sense of complicated problems. At the moment, he works as a consultant for the World Bank in addition to working with the US based private
You to our cell, EarthSoul, the economics research cell of Shahid Bhagat Singh College, is an initiative of the Department of Economics to foster and promote research culture among the undergraduate fraternity of Delhi University and to make smooth transition from theory to practice. With our vision and mission in mind, we have taken a new initiative of Equilibria. It is a podcast series where we would invite seasoned researchers and professionals.
equity clients. Now we would like to carry forward our podcast.
So the first question of today's podcast is, sir, everyone has some idol or role model who inspires them. It can be their teachers, parents, professionals, anyone. So what inspires you to choose this profession over other professions and to become what you are today in the field of research?
Thank you so much, Achor, for having me over here. I think it's a pleasure to have a platform where I can, generally share my ideas. What inspired me to take economics, let's like take that as an example, like why I chose this as a profession, because of its sheer applicability, right? Because when I was choosing my career stream and I was deciding what I want to do, I was genuinely looking at something that can create an impact. Now, I have worked extensively in finance as well, in like quantitative economics as well. So why I decided like, okay, let me choose a path in development economics because of the relevance it holds today, right? Because the economies are increasingly globalized, the disparity between rich and poor are increasing, and uh, the minorities, especially like the religious minority, if we talk about the gender minorities, uh, their relevance and how to bring them in the labor force is something that really excited me. That was the time when I came across the research by like the stalwarts and economists like Natalie Kaur, and I was like, okay, this is something that is really creating a movement and actually contributing to something that can create a wider impact. So I think identifying what resonates with your ideology and accordingly catering to that, say, okay, this is the field that I really want to go into, and okay, this is something that is actually creating an impact. That was my primary motivation of choosing this profession. It's not that I've only stuck to development economics, because I have like a wider passion for economics as an umbrella concept as well. So I tried different sub components within economics, so be it like finance, quantitative, history, like economics of history, thought, etc. And then I decided that okay, development is something that is really like that's keeping me like on my toes and like it's genuinely creating an impact. So that's why I decided to take this profession and like take this sub segment of economics as my career choice.
You explored all the subdomains of economics before choosing this one.
Yeah. I think that's the wise decision as well, because then if you stuck to one path only throughout your life, then you're always under this impression like, okay, what if I had to, like, like I would have gone for that
Yes,
path.
sir.
So that was a completely like informed decision that I made, that okay, this is something that I really want to do.
Okay, so now coming back to our topic for today's podcast, what are the most pressing gender related challenges that you think in our societies today, especially in Indian society?
Yeah, so I think the first and foremost thing is like, the gender disparity in like female labor force participation rate. Not enough women in India are working, right? If we look at like the historical trends and analyze the periodic labor force survey data from NSSO, we see that there is a 40 percentage point difference between the number of men who are employed and the women who are employed, right? So that difference has been consistent at the last 40 years, like 4 decades. It's a huge time frame, but that disparity has not come down. The governments have changed, the policies have been amended, India has gone through globalization, but that difference has remained the same. Now, if we look at, if we like, try to analyze that historical data, we see that okay, in maybe in the last 2 3 years, that the female labor force participation rate is going slightly up. Now, there are a variety of reasons. Not all women are working at the formal labor force participation, right? This increase in labor force participation rate for women that has happened in the past 2 to 3, like maybe 4 years, in terms of like maybe 2 3 percentage, that because of like increasingly women are working as gig workers in the informal labor market as care workers. So it's not essentially the how traditionally we see the employment, but the informal segment and other areas. Now that is necessarily not bad. The idea here is to bring more women into the workforce and also formalize the job market. Now, we have conducted extensive research at Nicor Associates and spoke to more than 100 women, understanding like, okay, what are the major challenges? Like, why? What are those impeding factors that are stopping women from entering into the labor force participation, like labor force market? So then we came across these 5 key barriers, right? So these are the 5 major challenges that majority of the women unanimously agreed that okay, these are the barriers that came from the field, right? Most of the women spoke about it. The first is unpaid care work, right? Now, unpaid care work is something that based on the consultation, women said that okay, we have to we are not able to work because we have somebody to take care of at the house, right? So be it their own child, be it somebody elderly. So there's a care burden on women, right? So if a woman is working full time, right, from 9 to 5 they are doing their job, and after going back home, if they still have responsibilities of cooking meal, taking care of their children, taking care of the elderly, that's create a double burden, right? It's a double shift, like we say. And when we analyze the data, we came like, that women in India are spending around 5.6 hours on unpaid care work vis-a-vis 30 minutes that are spent by men, right? So it's a huge difference, right?
Yes,
So
sir.
this is something that creates a burden and also an impeding factor. Many women said that okay, we were working, but there were not enough childcare facilities at their workplace. There were not enough creches. So their family put in pressure, and or they themselves decided that okay, let me just let me just drop out, maybe because of like the unforeseen circumstances. They have to sit at home and take care of the children, right? So that is also one of the impeding factor for women not being in the labor force, because they have double burden, right? Dual shift, like we say. The second is basically the digital divide, right? Women's access to digital devices or phones is often not prioritized. Like if we go to tier 2, tier 3 cities, we see that okay, like the women have the shared assets, right? A phone is often shared by with their sons, with their daughters, etc. Now their usage is not prioritized. Now if you have to work in today's time, you need to be digitally literate, right? You need to know how to operate a smartphone, but that's not really the case that is happening. It's improving over these years, but we have not still reached over there. So their usage is not prioritized. And even if their usage, okay, if they're given a smartphone, suppose you've given a smartphone to or like a woman has like gotten a smartphone, but their usage is monitored. The family is constantly sitting on their heads, understanding, okay, what are they doing on their smartphones? Whom are they talking to? What are they doing? What are you doing for so long? Right? So these situations and these social norms are necessarily not creating an enabling ecosystem for women to enter into the labor force, right? Because if today we want to bring more women into the labor force, we are saying that, okay, why don't they become a gig worker? Why don't they work from home? There are so many freelance opportunities. But if their usage at home is not prioritized, if they are constantly being monitored, that's not an enabling ecosystem for women, right? So we talked about unpaid care work. This is the digital divide. And then we have like the mobility restrictions. Now, for women to work, they might have to go somewhere, reach somewhere, right, from their home, which they might not get a job, which is maybe at like what, 3-4 kilometers in the diameter of their homes, right? They often have to travel. And to travel, they need to seek permission from their families, right? Now, permission is a dangerous word. Not many people will will give you that permission, or they're like, क्यों जाना है इतनी दूर, कैसे जाओगे, रात को कितने बजे आओगे? These are the situations. Again, this is not an enabling ecosystem, right? For them to seek constant permission to do something, to go to to go to their office. If they are late, then asking like, okay, why were you late? Like, what were you working? So everybody is working 9 to 5. Why are you home at 8, right? So this kind of ecosystem, and especially the infrastructure, right? The public transport, the urban mobility infrastructure is not gender sensitive at this point. It is designed for men, right? So this is a restriction, right? So I'll give you like a very recent example. We were speaking to some of the recent graduates from Siliguri, understanding like, okay, what are the kind of jobs they are looking for? What are the skills that they have earned? And when we ask them a question like, okay, where would you like your job to be? Like, तुमको कहाँ करना है job? कहाँ ढूंढ रहे हो? They want the job in Siliguri itself. And when asked this question, like, okay, will you be willing to, like, maybe relocate to Kolkata or migrate to some other nearby metro city? They're like, घर वाले नहीं मानेंगे. That's it. That's where the conversation ends. So that is the ecosystem or the social norms in India are around. It's obviously they're changing, but we've clearly not reached that point that we have like that's a sort of like an ecosystem. And then obviously we have like lack of safety, right? Workplace harassment, and like the urban mobility infrastructure I was talking about, the cropping, the
Yes, sir.
harassment, the eve teasing. These are not something. These are not creating like an enabling environment for women to be in the labor force. So these are the major challenges that women face.
Completely agreed, sir. I've seen such cases myself. So coming to the next point, the point that you mentioned about transportation, there has been a lot of fuss about women's coaches in metros and women's only buses to promote women's transport, but people label them as freebies to win elections. What is your take on it?
See, I think in metro, if we talk about, it's like it's a crowded public transport, and I believe it's essential to have like the women reserved seats, or especially like the women reserved coaches. That is something that is required. Now, see, if you bring in political perspective into like the policy making, then it obviously creates a lot of fuss, right? But having like creating an ecosystem in public transport where encouraging more women, and if you're seeing that, okay, more women are joining, or more women are opting for public transport, if they are given free, then why not?
Yes.
Right? Because that is the broader agenda, right? To bring more women into the labor force. And for that, if you need to create certain like situations where you have to offer like women reserved seats in buses, or I'm not saying like you run like only women buses, you can do it as a corporate, but for a government to do something like this is a big step, right? So if you have like certain seats reserved for women, if you have like women only coach in metro, I think that's completely fine, because that is creating an enabling environment for women.
Okay, so inside.
Okay. Well said, sir. So now I want to ask that how do economic disparities impact women differently from men, especially in terms of income, employment opportunities, and their career?
Yeah, so see, like it's a cyclical effect, right? If a woman has made a career, right, is very successful, then it's bound to happen that their kids, like suppose if they decide to have kids, and like if they decide to uh, like raise them, and then suppose then that creates an enabling environment, because then there is a role model for a daughter in the family to look up to her mother and be successful. So I think this is cyclical impact, right? If you are not encouraging women today to be in the labor force, if you're not providing or creating such situations, not giving them economic opportunities today, then creating certain level of opportunities in the future for their daughters is going to be a little difficult, right? Because that's how the social norms work. You have to break the monotony, right? If you break it today, then the change is going to be in the coming decades. So I think it's very important. And coming to the income disparity, see, it's very important for women to be financially independent, right? Because if they are not financially independent, then it leads to the n number of other issues in the house, right? So we were talking about lack of safety, right? So if a woman is a victim of domestic violence, right, and she is not financially independent, we've heard such cases where, because she's not financially independent, like what is she going to do now, right? The husband is threatening her on a daily basis, that you don't have something of your own, or she's a victim of it. That's where the community-based organizations come in and rescue these women. But it's important for women to find their voice, and to find their voice, they need to be financially and economically independent and strengthened by the government ecosystem, and like the community-based organization. So it's very important to have it's very important to bridge these economic and income disparity, to bridge the broader gender gaps in labor force, or like any other segment disparity overall in India. So it's very crucial.
So, related to that only, according to you, how well India has fared over the last, let's say, 50 years in bridging down the gap bridging down the gender disparity among men and women? And what
See,
are the major disturbances? What are the major obstacles in our way towards achieving gender equality?
right. So I think, in terms of just being aware that women need to be in the labor force, we've obviously done very well, right? We have today Smriti Irani, like the Women and Child Development Minister, taking oath, right, and releasing policy briefs on care economy. So we've done pretty well in having that awareness in the government or in the stakeholder ecosystem, that okay, we need to bring more women. But if you look at the gender gaps, right, in the labor force participation rate over these years, it is not the gap is not bridged. It's improving. We've not reached there where we want to be, right? uh, in terms of like what are the major things that government can do, right, and what are the major obstacles that we have in front of us? Firstly, it's very important to create an enabling environment, right? We've identified these challenges. These are like the proven challenges: unpaid care work, digital divide, mobility restriction. These are the challenges that we have. Now what we need to do to bridge these challenges and to bring more women is like having more childcare facilities at workplace, right? Having more creches, right? If you have like childcare, lactating rooms, these are the things that you need to have at the workplace, so that women can stop caring about what their child is doing at home with a nanny or with a random person, and work productively and proactively at their workplace, right? And also create a talk, a conversation where community-based organization can come in, sit and deal with this entire social norms and social stereotypes, that it's not only women's responsibility to take care of the children or elderly, it's equally a man's responsibility as well. So creating this kind of conversation, having more and more care infrastructure, creating a sound urban mobility infrastructure. So you have metros, you need to have uh, like metros or similar public transport in other cities as well. What about tier two, tier three cities, right? There are certain, when we talk about urban mobility infrastructure, we should also touch upon the dark spots in the cities. There are certain areas in the cities which are not lit at all,
Yes.
right? So you need to identify these kind of areas and invest in it, right? Create that infrastructure. We have already investing a lot of money in building roads and highways. If we are doing that, that's really good. Then why don't bring a gender lens to it as well, which the government right now I think is willing to do that. So I think it's need to create a more conversation in the ecosystem with the stakeholders, that okay, we are building infrastructure, we are creating roads, we are creating highways, we are building more buildings. Now let's just apply gender lens to it. Like, what are the challenges women are facing, and while building this, we'll just address those issues as well. So I think these are the things that needs to be done at the stakeholder at a, like, the ecosystem level.
Okay. So, sir, do you think we are efficient enough today so that we can increase the women participation in a few years and reduce the gap between male and female, or it would take us a few more quiet years?
So I think like it's very difficult to pinpoint a year that okay, by this year we are going to address the gender gap, because like I said, we are improving, but we are still not at that level, or like still lagging behind. Like I said, the sooner we realize that we need to invest in care infrastructure, we need to improve urban mobility, we need to apply gender lens to it, the earlier we're going to bridge the gender gap. So this, like, it's possible to do that in like coming 2-3 decades as well. Like, we can say that okay, maybe in that time frame, everything will be sorted, and like, the governments and the stakeholders will realize, see, breaking social norms take time, right? You can't just
Yes,
change
sir.
people's mindset overnight, right? If there are stereotypes about, in like rural areas or even in urban areas, that okay, women have to work in this specific sector as well. How often we've heard that okay, civil and mechanical engineering is just for men. Women don't do that. Women just like, they should do computer science. These are the social norms. This is an occupational segregation, right? So the sooner we break these stereotypes, create a conversation in the ecosystem, the sooner we're going to bridge the gender gap.
Okay, sir.
Completely agree, sir. In fact, I have seen women dropping out of labor force, due to these very reasons.
Yeah.
So now coming to the research aspect of this podcast, what are some of the research methodologies that is used in this field of gender disparity or gender disparity research? The methods of data collection and data analysis.
See, whenever you want to understand what is the ground reality, and let the research come from the, like, these beneficiaries directly, you need to get your hands in qualitative research. You can't just be sitting on a desk analyzing past 70 years data, 80 years data, and like devising policies, unless you actually go on the ground and speak to women, right?
Yeah.
Because they're going to tell you the reality. So I think what we've done so far is we followed the mixed method approach. We've analyzed the trend. Okay, at a macro level, this is the gender gap. And to understand like what is leading to this gender gap, we went on ground, did a qualitative research, spoke to 100 plus women in 3 tranches, and just let the themes come from the field, like we say in qualitative research, right? So we went and we spoke. So I think whenever you want to understand the reasoning behind anything, right, and especially if it involves human, and like that qualitative research is very crucial in that perspective. But obviously we cannot ignore the data, because nobody else is going to take us seriously if we just don't
Ignore the
cite
data.
data or give numbers, right?
Yes,
So
sir.
mixed method is obviously like a midway, and that's what we follow at Nicor Associates as well.
Right.
Okay.
In, in fact, this is what we have done in our one of our projects as well. So it was
Yeah,
about uh, analyzing the impacts of COVID-19 on education, especially the online education. So
yeah,
we did exactly the same. Did
yeah,
survey of students across India.
yeah.
Now, Hamza, would you like to go ahead?
Okay, sir. So, researching about you, we have noticed that you have worked on different types of and variety of projects.
Hmm.
So, we want to ask that what was your most exciting yet challenging research project that you worked on, and how did you overcome the challenges that you faced in your research project?
Right. So I think, see, every project brings with it like its own set of challenges, but excitement as well. So we recently worked on a CSR advisory project for a client based out of Pune. There we had to, do an impact assessment of their one of the women economic empowerment initiative, and the major challenge there was like, sort of like, because it was like a rural belt of Maharashtra and tribal belt of Maharashtra. Um, I was the principal investigator in that research, but I don't know Marathi. That is also the challenge that many of the folks who are budding researchers face, because India is such a diverse country, and if you have to do a research at one particular state or a segment and you don't know the language, that's the biggest challenge. So that was the challenge in front of us, that okay, we don't know Marathi, and especially in Marathi there are different dialects, right? Like the tribals speak different Marathi and the city people speak different Marathi. So then how do we address that challenge? Like, we don't know the Marathi. We tried like Google Translate. We did like all the runs and trial runs. Nothing was working out. Uh, then what we did is like basically hired like a couple of interns and researchers from Maharashtra who could help us with the primary research and doing the translation of all the like the conversations that they were having, and that's how we moved ahead. So I think being on your toes when you are doing research is very crucial. You can't just sit and just feel demotivated. So if you're not finding a solution to something, the answer is to just go out there, see what can be figured, and just do it. So that's what I think we also did over there.
That was pretty innovative, sir.
Yes, sir.
Well, so coming to the next question, what are some of the major findings of your research projects up till now, especially in development sector and gender disparity?
So like I said, these five pillars, like we identified that okay, these are the the framework that is like solely devised by Nicole Associates, right? This is what when we discussed with women on ground, we identified okay, these are the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 challenges that are coming up again and again. So unpaid care work, digital divide, lack of safety, mobility restrictions, skill gap. These are the five the impeding factors that stop women from getting into the labor force. Now, if we extend this conversation, and we recently did a lot of work on platform economy. Platform economy is essentially like a three-way marketplace where if you have skills, you can list yourself on that platform, and if I need those particular set of skills, I'll just hire you. So something like how Urban Clap or Urban Company works, right? They have like
More of
beauticians and they,
freelancing.
yeah, proper freelancing. So because we identified that okay, unpaid care work is a challenge, right? Because women don't have the flexibility, they have to go to office, so maybe that's why they're not opting for it. We thought that okay, then maybe platform economy is a solution to it, right? Because they have to work from their home, they can just toggle in, toggle off their availability on the app anytime they want, like Ola, Uber drivers do. But there also we identified that these similar barriers exist, right? So even if a woman is a freelance worker, is working on a platform, the issues of unpaid care work, lack of safety, mobility, they still persist because now if they have to go to somebody else's house to provide a service, it's a risky factor, right? Most of the time, men book massage on behalf of women
Yes.
to get women to their houses. So it's a completely similar story, but an evolving market. More and more people are going to be working in platform economy. So that's what we are working on. Like how what are those major challenges? But these challenges replicate these five barrier framework you will find in any type of employment opportunity that exists, and these are the challenges that women are facing. So this is what our major finding at Nicole Associates have been.
So, sir, as you were a part of Nicor Associates, so could you brief us a little about the research process at big institute like Nicor Associates, including their literature review and data collection, etc.
Yeah. So I think whenever we decide on taking any project or any research topic, so suppose, like I said, taking about, okay, the platform economy. Now it's very important to understand, like, what are we trying to do? Okay, like blindly researching about platform economy is not going to lead us anywhere. What we are trying to understand is how we follow a research process is come to a concrete research question. Okay, we want to understand gender gaps in platform economy so that we have a structure. Now after we have this research question in our head and being circulated in the entire team, then we obviously go for literature review and understand what already has been written on gender gaps in platform economy.
Yes, sir.
Okay, we've identified okay, gender gaps in platform economy. This person is talking about that perspective, this person is talking about another country, another segment in another industry. Then we come up like, okay, where can we contribute? We just don't want to replicate the existing research, right? Whatever is written is already written. We want to come in as an innovative research group to bring in our own perspective. So after conducting the thorough research, we analyze that okay, this is an area that we want to enter into. For example, in platform economy, we saw that many people are talking about gig work,
Yes.
right? Even the Niti Aayog's, the report on India's booming gig economy, they were talking about gig platform, interchangeably. But when we were doing the research, we understood that okay, what about the e-commerce players, right? Women entrepreneurs who are not that large, who don't have any enough large businesses, but they're selling it on Amazon. They are also platform workers, right? So after conducting like a review, we understand, okay, this literature is fragmented. Some section is talking about this one gig economy, some is talking about commerce. Why not just bring in diverse perspectives into this one concrete research that we'll be doing? And once we've decided, then we know that, okay, we want to understand about gig, commerce, etc. Then we come to the methodology, right? Like, what is the best way to go forward? We understood from here that, okay, limited data exists, so there's no point doing a like data analysis of anything, right? So the
Yes, sir.
straightaway answer to it was like, go on ground, speak to women or speak to people, right? So this is how typically follow the method, that once we have identified, okay, this is a broader segment, then we do a review of it, then we see where can we contribute, bring in our own past experience, where we can contribute, and then we go for straight away data collection. We follow always mixed method approach, where we essentially go and speak to like the stakeholders on ground, because we believe that that gives the real picture.
Cool. So the best way to understand how where we stand is basically to compare ourselves with those who are already developed in the gender term, in the gender equality term. Uh, could you please share your insights on how where do we stand when we compare ourselves to countries like US and UK in terms of gender disparity? Like, are we on comparable to them, or are we like we lag behind them?
See, again, it's see, you can't compare apple to oranges, right? Those are developed countries. They have limited social stereotypes, right? They have limited social norms. They might have social norms, but their social norms are completely different from ours, right? So I think India is growing. India is moving into that direction, but it's not always right to compare it with other countries. They obviously have better infrastructure. We don't. If we want to like establish it in that perspective, they have creches, they have childcare facilities, they have social security, they have n number of things, right? We are still like on that path to to achieve those things. So I think we are on the right track. It's just that we need to create more conversation around it within government, within stakeholders, I think, which is happening. And I think we'll soon be at that level.
Okay, so that was pretty insightful.
Okay, sir. So, the most important yet somewhat tricking part of the research is getting your research paper published. So, could
Hmm.
you give us some tips and tricks to our young researchers regarding publishing their papers?
Yeah. So see, now I'll like, because I'll just move away from, I'll remove my Nicole Associates hat and talk to you about like being like a young researcher only. So I think it's see, research is not always about churning out papers, right? You can like
Sure, sir.
in academia, if we see that everybody's behind like just getting their research published, and everybody runs behind journal, right? Like we want to get a journal publication done. You have to identify what are your priorities. If you really want to contribute to an academic literature, right, you have like identified that, okay, this is something that is like is going to add some value, then you run behind journal. But doing research at a mediocre level and aiming to get it published in a journal is not right, right? Because people who are aiming to get the like research published, they are like deploying extensive methodologies and doing that. But if your idea is to get more visibility, right? If you want your research to be read by other people, then the college society magazines, like I believe your
Yes,
college will
right.
also have magazine, and then there are you go to Times of India readers blog, you can publish your findings over there. There's Medium, there's like you can create your own website, you can do that. uh, because journal publications take time, and it's obviously good to aim for that. But if you are because see, at a wider audience level, if you see, nobody really reads journal articles, right? If you yourself you come across a research paper, you read its abstract, you read its conclusion, and then you're like, okay, we understood what this paper is going to talk
Yes,
about,
yes, yes.
right?
Yes,
So
sir.
you have to understand your uh, agenda. Like, you want to actually contribute, then obviously aim for journal articles, but do a thorough research about what kind of articles that journal is accepting, right? You
Yes.
have to identify a journal and then tailor your the methodology and writing style according to it, not your research findings, but your writing style.
And style.
And what kind of papers are they publishing? So suppose you target, like, suppose hypothetically you target American Economic Review, like a top economic journal in the world, right? And then you are solely doing qualitative research, which is not following enough guidelines, etc., then your research is not going to get published, right? You targeting a journal which is publishing a quant heavy research papers, and then you're sending something which is entirely qualitative, that's not going to get published, right? So it's very important to understand, identify list, okay, these are the 5 journals that I want to publish my research in. Okay, these are the requirements, and this is how I need to tailor my methodology to get it published over there. But if your agenda is to like more and more people to read about it, you can obviously publish it as an op-ed or as a normal essay or an article in college magazines, in media, on Medium, on SSR, and
Yes.
right. These are the medium where you can publish and circulate it with wider audience.
That was pretty informative, sir.
I want to ask something that, as you mentioned earlier about the stereotype. So, as we all know that education is one of the most important factor in breaking the stereotype in our society. So, do you think are there any factors, any important factor which is often ignored by the society, which also helps to tackle some of the stereotypes?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So I think like education is not and often ignored, right? People talk
So,
about it.
besides
Everybody,
education,
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, education is not an ignored one. I think the biggest stereotype that often gets ignored and people don't pay much attention is unpaid care work.
Yes.
Nobody talks about it. People are now talking about it, but if you go to like at your homes, at at a much granular level, at a at a neighborhood or gali mohalla level, um, I don't think people are talking enough about it, that how women have double burden. Women sometimes themselves not realize that
Yes.
okay, they have a double shift. But I think this is something that needs to be addressed, talked about, to break the gender stereotypes, and that will only lead women to in the education ecosystem or labor force. If you're breaking stereotypes at home, that's gonna something that's gonna lead there. I think these are some of the areas where the stereotypes can be addressed.
Completely agree, sir. Unpaid care is considered as the duty of women.
Yeah.
So now coming to the next question, if you had to go back to your college days, what different would
Hmm.
you do than what you had already did?
I honestly think I've made like enough informed decision. I thought a lot about it. But I think okay, that's a tricky question. See, I think my dissertation that I wrote as a part of my like college degree, I solely employed qualitative research over there. Uh, I think if I would have done some data analysis, some trend analysis over there, I would have been informed about mixed methodologies way before, and would have implemented way before that I'm doing now at Nicole Associates, right? So I think that's something that was something I could have done back then. I think the rest of me deciding to take up different internships and different areas, I think that was a pretty informed decision anyway.
Cool.
so for internship, some students might think that internship, yeah, it is important for our CV and resumes, but some think that it is just a waste of time. So, what do you think?
It's clearly not a waste of time. Let's just move that thing aside. See, I don't
I met
think
many
Indian
people who
education.
said that.
Yeah.
I met many people who said that their internship is just a waste of time. They just
Hmm.
want to get their work complete at a lower cost, so they hire interns. So, what do you think?
No, so see, I think I have a completely different view to it. I think, see, I don't think Indian education system has evolved or reached that point where college education or a degree is enough for you to land a job.
Yes.
That's clearly not the case.
Yes.
Yes,
We are still far behind, right? There is a huge gap between what we are taught and what is required in the industry.
practical
And
education.
only, yep, and only way to understand is to get an internship to get a gist of what industry needs, right? I think
Yes, sir.
organization less, but the employees or the interns gain more from an internship. I have a completely different view regarding the unpaid internship as well. So, like, I think it's important, crucial for students or kids to realize that okay, if they want to be actually employable, okay, it's good to have it on CV as well, but they need to understand what is required in the industry. You cannot just get a full-time employment and then understand like what, okay, this is something I don't know this, I don't know that. I think that's too late. If you really want to enter into development sector, if you really want to enter into finance sector, it's very important for you to get as many internships as possible to understand, okay, this is what is required, and I need to get those skills before I graduate to land a job.
Okay.
So if the attitude is like, okay, it's a waste of time, then the job is also going to be waste of time then.
Okay.
So coming to the last question of the day, what is your advice for our aspiring youth and our aspiring researchers?
I think it's very crucial to do research, to actually do research. Being an aspiring researcher also means that you have innovative ideas, and like you want to explore different fields and like conduct different research. Just do it. Don't wait for anyone. Don't wait for your peers to come along. Don't wait for you to get like a supervisor or something. Just do it. Just explore that area. I think LinkedIn is a huge community at this point. If you think that, okay, your ideas are not moving anywhere, you can just simply put up a post and there are the 1,000 people who will be ready to help you. So I think just being out there, reaching out to more and more people who are actually doing research in the field you are interested in. So if you are interested in gender based research, you should be reaching out to people who are conducting research in gender, understanding how are they doing it, right? What is the difference? So suppose that happens, it happens that like in development sector, there's a lot of ongoing research around RCTs, randomized controlled trials, right? Many organizations are doing it. Now, if your passion is something like that, you cannot have individual resources to do that kind of research, right? So you need to understand very much that, okay, the area that you are researching in, what kind of research is being done, that you can only understand by reading papers. If you don't like reading papers, talk to people and understand like what are they doing, and then get an articleship with them, get a like a training or a research fellow position, associate position with them. I think that's the only way to go forward. Talk more, do more.
That was pretty informative, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir. It was great to have a talk with you. And thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to host this wonderful podcast and sharing your valuable insights with us. In our college, your advice was vital, and we were inspired by your waiting words. We hope this podcast series will benefit many college students in their late college journey. And thank you to our audience for staying with us till the end. We hope to see you again in the future episodes. Stay curious, knowledgeable, and attentive.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you so much, sir.